Hi everyone, we are going to Mars. This is the Daedalus Complex pack review, and today I have with me none other than the esteemed Timmy Wong. Hi Timmy.
Hi Ben, thanks for having me.
Yep, it's a pleasure. And yeah, so we are going to Mars, Timmy. How do you feel about the whole Red Sand cycle? There have been lots of spoilers for a couple of the packs so far, including this one. What do you feel about the cycle as a whole?
I've not gone through and systematically like tried to keep track of all the spoilers. It's just so many cards got spoiled at Worlds.
Oh yeah,
Uh,
most of the cards came during the Gunslinger event, which I presume you didn't take part in.
I think it was during day two, right? Or the top cut?
Yeah, we were
Like,
too busy playing.
yeah, unfortunately, that sounded like fun.
Yeah, I wish I got to play against the players as well. I heard one very funny story. One of our Brits actually brought diaper to the Gunslinger event and completely wrecked one of the FFG employees. And at the end of it, the employee said like, "Oh, someone has broken our game. What is this false echo DDoS combo?" But yeah, Worlds was a
Well,
lot of fun.
that person probably did the Netrunner community a service by bringing the attention of that to FFG.
Yes, DDoS on ban list, most wanted list sometime soon, maybe. But we're not here to speculate that. For now, we'll get into the pack review. Usually I do my pack reviews by corp, followed by runner. But this time we'll do it a bit differently. I'll cover the strong cards in the first half and the not so strong cards in the second half. But all of the cards are still interesting and worth chatting about, so let's get started. Our first card is More. This is an Anarch console. It costs 6 to install, so very expensive. If you thought Cipher was expensive at 5, wait till you have this. It gives the same amount of memory as Cipher, but has a different effect. It basically acts like a Utopia shard, allowing you to trash random cards from HQ once per turn if you access a card that you don't steal or trash. So this is quite interesting. It
Yeah, it's a
is
strong effect.
it is a very strong effect. It's stronger than it seems at first glance. It's surprising how disruptive, almost oppressive this can be if you're sitting on the corpse side. If you're holding a bunch of combo cards in your hand, or even just, ice that you are preparing to play at a later stage, you really don't want it trashed from your hand. I can see this being a very disruptive console.
Especially against decks where you can access a card at low cost. So asset spam decks, right?
Yep.
Against decks where you want to check the remotes anyway. If you check a remote once per turn, you also make the corp trash a card from their hand once per turn, which is the card that they can't spam at anymore. So it seems really strong against those styles.
Yeah, that's a very good point. So you can't really trigger this if their HQ and R&D are iced up very well and the remote iced up very well. But if you're playing against asset spam with naked remotes, yeah, you can access, not trash, and trigger more instead. So this is pretty good. Yeah, what kind of runner deck do you see this card fitting in? Because I think the biggest problem with this console is that it is an Anarch console. There's a lot of competition in faction.
Yeah, like you even mentioned in your comparison, like comparing it directly to Cipher, right? And that's where the card really suffers because it's being compared against the best console to be printed since Desperado.
Mm-mm. Yeah.
Slightly more expensive and probably more conditional effects because the corp has more control over how often you can trigger it,
Yeah.
as opposed to just destroying a nice per turn once you get set up.
There's very little reason to play this over Cipher if you already have cards like Parasite or Fix Breakers.
But it is good against a different style of corp deck, I think, right? Like the asset spam decks don't have that much ice. Cipher is going to be hard to justify the cost against those decks.
Mm-hmm.
So Maul would probably be better against the more degenerate corp decks. So maybe there's some kind of balance that can be reached here.
Yeah, that's quite true. That's a very good point. I think everyone will start slotting more in soon just to deal with all the railgun decks, all the power shutdown combo decks that are floating around right now.
I'm not sure if this is a cycle that ends well for the game, but
Yeah, we can only wait and see.
Let's see.
Yeah.
It is notable that the Anarch from this cycle got spoiled, and this is pretty clearly her console, right?
Yes. Yes. They both actually. Yeah, they have very similar effects. They're not exactly the same effect, but that we'll get to when we find the Anarch Runner ID, which is not in this pack.
No, but yeah, it's for people who don't know, it's Alice Merchant, and when she runs archives, the corp trashes a card once per turn.
Yeah, so the difference is the corp gets to choose which card to trash for Alice, whereas for this one, it's random.
Yeah, and this doesn't work off of archives. Otherwise, that would be very crazy.
Yeah, that would be pretty crazy. So yeah, very strong console, only mitigated by the presence of stronger consoles. But I think this is pretty fun design. Yeah, would love to see this running, floating around in the meta. Should be very
It
interesting to
is.
play with and against.
It feels a little overcosted, but that might just be because all the other consoles are undercosted.
Yeah, probably. I mean, it's a very strong effect still.
Yeah, agreed.
I think
I
six
look
costs.
forward to trying this card.
Yeah. Oh yeah, one more thing I wanted to say. The best thing about this console is it's probably universally useful. Whereas again, with some Anarch consoles like Turntable, they are rather useless against certain corp decks like ETF, for example. Um, most corps will suffer if you randomly trash cards from their hand every once in a while. And yeah, no matter no matter what Anarch strategy you're playing, this console can always add some value.
Right. It's maybe the most universal console yet. All the other ones require more setup, I would think.
Yeah, either you have to deck
Ziffer is
build.
pretty universal.
Yeah, Cipher is. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, but yeah, you're right. For the most part, you need to deck build, like having viruses in your deck with Grimoire, or take tags with Obelisk. This one doesn't require much setup other than, playing basic Netrunner, getting accesses. Yeah.
I guess it's a little weaker in Wizard, since Wizard wants to be trashing everything he accesses.
Yes,
But
that's my thought as well.
Mm.
It does feel like it's a bit counter synergistic with Wizard.
and Ed Kim, I guess. Ed Kim is a little worse even. He has to trash.
Oh, I mean, I would lower the hammer any day over playing more. Gotta get those
Oh,
hammer triggers. Alright.
yeah, seriously.
Alright. That's more. Let's move on to another Anarch card. Oh, this one I think is really powerful. It's a connection, a resource in Anarch. And I
Or influence.
believe the first Anarch card to have 1+1 link on it. It's the Archivist, costs 1 to install, and allows you to gain a bad pub whenever the corp scores an initiative or security agenda. Of course, there's a trace, but for all intents and purposes, you are beating that trace with your newfound link.
It's Trace 1, correct?
Yes, it's trace 1. So essentially, basically the corp has to pay more money than you have if they want to avoid the bad pub. Which, good luck with that, if you're the corp.
Yeah. That won't work unless the runner's like dead broke when you're scoring.
Yeah, pretty much that. And if you're scoring agendas as the corp, typically you'll be going down in credits. So for most intents and purposes, I don't see you avoiding the bad pub as the corp. So the only viable way to so-called avoid the bad pub is to score the non-initiative and security agendas first.
Right. Because bad pub takes time to pay off. So scoring your last agenda, obviously, the bad pub won't do anything. Scoring the penultimate agenda, the bad pub will give them a few free credits.
Yeah, but those few free credits add up really, really quickly. A runner
Sure.
with two bad pub, for example, that if you're an asset spam deck, it basically means all your assets are two less to trash. That is, that means you're not gonna get any asset spam game going. And if you're running regular breakers, you can use the bad pub to a lot of great effect. So I feel like this is a very strong card, and thankfully it's for influence. Shaper and Criminal aren't getting any of this.
I did pull up a list of all the initiative and security agendas. Can you
Alright,
see?
yep, I can see it.
All right, so it's like Nisei, AstroScript, bunch of bad ones.
Oh, that's
NAPD, House of Knives, Melodic, Future Perfect. Oaktown, all the renovations. Food, QPM, and that's mostly it.
So notably, a lot of the defensive agendas are initiative security. So
Yeah.
you have global food. I mean, most notably is global food because global food is basically in every deck. So uh, then again, the corp probably won't score a food early. So yeah, I guess it's quite hard to say.
And then if we look at the ones that aren't, that's ABT and Vitruvius. So that's a big deal against HB.
Yep. Yeah, those are agendas that HB tends to score early. So, yep, it's not that good against HB.
Against Jinteki, it's just like Beetle AI.
They
don't wanna
won't
score
score
that.
Fetal early. Yeah, so it should be decent against Jinteki if they're trying to score in the first place.
It hits Nisei and Future Perfect, so that's a big deal against Jinteki, Glacier, or Slow Decks.
Yep. For MBN, you have Bill. Bill doesn't get hit, but Astro Script does.
Yeah, well,
There's
I guess
only one Astro.
the Astro nerf hurts this card quite a bit.
It does, actually. Yeah, ironically.
Because Breaking News and Exploda are the other two, and neither of them are security or initiative.
Yeah, so NBN probably won't get hit by this. And then we have Weyland, which scores Atlases, hostile takeovers, Oaktowns as well. Oaktown is public.
Oaktown is an initiative, actually.
It's public and initiative. So yeah, it's good against Oaktown. We have that.
Which is the best agenda for Weyland to score early. So
Yep.
that's a decent effect.
If not for the fact that Weyland's probably already swimming in bad pub, or
Right,
has
that's true.
some way to remove it. So, okay, so I actually overrated this card. It seems like it doesn't get a lot of triggers. Notably, it's quite dead against HB and NBN for the most part.
It's pretty conditional.
Yes, that it is a lot more conditional than I thought it was. Wow. Okay. That was very, very useful. Thanks for that, Timmy.
No problem. I mean, that doesn't mean it's a bad card, right? The cost is so low.
It's basically a straight up upgrade over what do you call that? Access to global sec. So
Right.
yeah,
Which is not a huge endorsement, but it's a very nice bonus.
Yep, it is.
And Link has gotten better to the point where this last cycle, I've definitely like looked at access to global sec and been like, how bad is this card? Right. With the rise of CTM, like Link has it's come to the forefront of the game for sure.
Yeah, and yeah, as you said, even though this card doesn't do much against NBN, if you're up against a link-based strategy, the extra link will definitely pay off. So it's still quite handy with a lot of users. Yeah, it's just not as strong as I initially thought it was because my impression of it is that you can rack up at least 1 or 2 bad pump in every single game with this card out.
Yeah, I think you'll often get a bad pub as the corpse scores their winning food.
Yeah, it really does seem like that's the case, which is quite a pity, but that's how it works.
Yeah.
I don't think you build any deck around this and blackmail, so it's way too unreliable to turn blackmail on. If you want to play blackmail, you're better off starting with Valencia instead. But
it could maybe act as support for a bad pup strategy, though. Either in Valencia or maybe outside, because there are like more cards that give bad pub now.
Yeah, I mean, everyone could use some bad pub. And the amazing thing about this card is, unlike most of the other bad pub cards we've seen so far, this one's actually really cheap. Just 1 click and 1 credit to get possibly 1 or even 2 bad pub. Most other bad pub cards like Frame Job, Investigative Journalism, those are really, really bad, click intensive.
Yeah, this one is more conditional, but it also costs you very little.
Yep. So yeah, this is quite interesting. Um,
I think it's a cool card.
it is very
Um,
cool. It's
I think I would maybe like it less if it was more powerful because it's similar to Aaron Marone, right?
I was gonna
I
make that
don't
comparison. Yeah.
I don't like these cards that heavily punish the corp for scoring because then it really just encourages the corp not to score, and those decks are like not fun to play against.
Yes, I have the exact same sentiments as you. High five. Yeah.
Ooh.
Yeah, Aaron Maron is really powerful and is the cause of a lot of corps gravitating towards strategies that don't involve scoring agendas early on. And yeah, that's probably less good for the game. So yeah, it's good that cards like Archivist are not on that power level, but still, very interesting. Still interesting and still playable.
You could probably pull this card out at just the right time in the meta and wreak some damage with it.
Yeah, Yeah, I guess it's a good safety valve for future powerful initiative and security agendas.
If RP Glacier comes back, this probably becomes decent.
Yeah, giving bad pub to RP Glacier is quite a big deal.
Hmm.
All right, so that's Archivist for you. What do we have next? Is it another Anarch card? Nope, it's Exploit. This is the criminal's version of Notoriety, Apocalypse. Yeah. So you have to run all 3 centrals, but if you do, you can spend your last click to de-res up to 3 pieces of ice. This only takes a click, costs 2 credits to play. It's a very, very powerful effect. Now, I
think FFG should have made a cool subtype for these cards where you have to run all 3 centrals.
Yeah, they missed the boat there. Yeah, this is actually very powerful. You can always compare this to Emergency Shutdown, which is not really being played right now. However, I think this is quite different because in one click you get to de-res 3 ice instead of 1, so you're getting a lot more efficiency out of the single card. And so yeah,
Yeah.
it basically compensates for the fact that a lot of ice are very cheap to res nowadays. So if you play a shutdown on, say, what are ice that cause criminals a lot of problems? Archangel, for example, is one. Fairchild 3 is another one. And emergency shutdown on these is, a bit of a tempo hit for the corp, but it's nothing major. This, however, just changes everything.
It's basically a triple emergency shutdown, right? Where you require 3 runs and de-res 3 pieces of ice.
Yeah, all in one click and one card. So
Mm-hmm.
it is a powerful effect. And
very cool.
Yeah, very, very cool. It will definitely cost the corp like as much as 10 credits swing, if not more, depending on what sort of ice they have rezzed. So
that's probably the issue with the card, right? Like the other run 3 centrals cards. Okay, let's go through them.
Yes.
Notoriety just gives you a point. That's always decent.
Mhm.
Apocalypse destroys their board, which is almost always great. And then Quest Complete is like pretty conditional. You have to like time it just right, and then you get into a server that you normally can't get into.
Yeah.
This one just depends on what ice they have. So it's maybe less conditional than Quest Complete, but more conditional than the other ones.
Yep.
Yeah, like against certain decks, this does nothing, which sucks. But against the right deck, if you can pull it off, you'll cost them 20 credits or something. That's crazy.
Yeah, this is a card that really can wreak a lot of havoc. I would say this is actually not that conditional because if you're running all 3 centrals, you are already winning the game. So the corp needs to be rezzing ice to be defending against you. So I think you will almost always find 3 res pieces of ice to use this on. But as you said, yeah, against the faster decks that only run gear check ice, then yes, maybe you won't, like, de-rezzing vanillas is not what you want to be doing. But yeah,
you have a good point that the corp will probably res ice to defend you against you when you run all 3 centrals. So that's pretty nice.
Yep.
The danger is that you will have to get through all of this like tough ice you're trying to de-res in order to pull it off. So
yeah,
it's a lot of tension in this card.
There is. But I'm envisioning, a modern run-based Andromeda deck that once set up with enough Temujin money and breakers can easily get their way through every single server if they want to. Usually the problem with criminals is that the very taxing code gates just taxes them out. The likes of DNA Tracker and Toll Booth, that's not what criminal wants to be dealing with. But this card is going to change that.
It's a very criminal solution.
Very much, yes. I mean, they can't find an efficient way to get through high strength code gates. No worries, just derez it and cost the corp a lot of tempo. I think this card would definitely make criminal a lot, not a lot, but significantly stronger than it already is.
You think he'll see play in most like standard criminal decks?
Run-based criminal, sure. You're already making runs. You already want your Desperado credits, your security testing, your dirty laundries. All these cards just stack up and help you enable exploit. So I can definitely see a standard run-based Andromeda splashing, or rather, including one or two of these. Where do you see exploit being used in?
You might be right. I might have been underrating this a little bit. But I could see it as a one-of and be pretty strong in a lot of situations for like standard Andromeda.
I agree. It's probably a one-off. Yeah.
And I think it could be the centerpiece of a more like denial-based criminal as well, right? Like Gabe or something.
Yeah. Or even a Leela deck. This can be really powerful and funny with Leela because ice that is no longer eligible for bouncing because they are rezzed are suddenly bounceable. So that is really fun. I like that. Another good thing about exploit is that it deals with one of Andromeda's counters very well. That is next dice. So usually, as the more you run, the more next dice you res, the stronger they get. But you can control their power with exploit. So yeah, it actually solves
really cool.
quite a few criminal problems right now.
Oh yeah, and when Los comes out, the new criminal from this cycle, he'll really like this one.
Oh man, yeah, this seems like a Los card. Yeah. For those of you who haven't seen him, he gains 2 credits the first time the corp reses an ice each turn. Is that right?
That sounds right, yeah.
Yep, that's synergy right there. Alright, one final question before moving on. Would you splash this card outside of the criminal faction?
I think it's within the realm of possibility. Maybe if Reyna makes a comeback. This seems like a perfect Reyna card.
This is very Reyna, yeah. That will cost the corp a lot of money. And another interesting question is, would you go out of your way to play synergistic cards? I'm thinking of cards like Hernando Cortez, increasing the rest cost of cards.
Ooh.
Yeah, that could be a possibility.
I do love Hernando Cortez.
Yeah, maybe he'll be playable now with exploit out. This is very interesting deck building space to explore. Can't wait for it.
It's probably not good, mostly because you already need to set up the exploit, right? Like once you pull off the exploit, you don't really need to pad your deck with cards that are good once you've exploited the corp. Probably.
Yeah,
does that make sense?
True. Yeah, I mean, yeah, you're winning already. I get what you're saying. That is, yeah. But yeah, I guess.
But there's certainly synergy there.
Sorry?
There's certainly synergy there. Like, synergy is never bad.
Yeah, I'm just curious as to whether this synergy will make its way to the tier 1.5 or the competitive decks. But I guess for now you can say that this card will definitely be exploited. Alright, let's move on. Let's make a mad dash out of here. So this is a card that gives you agenda points, 1 agenda point, if you steal an agenda during the run. It's a run event and has a punishment of forcing 1 meat damage on you if you do not manage to steal an agenda at the end of this run. So high risk, high reward seems like a very Anarch thing, but nope, this is a neutral card and it doesn't cause influence. So immediately you compare it to Freedom 3 quality, and yeah, it's not a current, which means that it cannot turn off corp currents, but the good thing is that it costs 0 credits, so immediately it becomes a lot more playable. Yeah, Freedom 3 quality is actually quite expensive, especially if you cannot guarantee agenda accesses. This one, you'll be forced to take 1 meat damage, which is something, but it's not the worst. I can definitely see this going in aggressive decks like Leela deck or Gabe deck, for example, that wants to close out the game quickly. This would be perfect.
How do you time this card without support though in that sort of strategy?
Yeah, that's a good question. So if you're playing this card, you almost certainly want some sort of synergy with it. So run-based multi-access is out of the question. You cannot combine this with the likes of Legwork or Maker's Eye, so that's out. So you're down to multi-access. Medium's a very good card. Turning Wheel with a lot of counters will do work. Otherwise, Keyhole or Noise gets you there as well. Anything that mills agendas into archives, forces them into the bin. Mad Dash is very good in those decks. So yeah, there are a lot of ways to make this work. One very interesting way to get this done is to use spying cards like Spy Camera and Find the Truth, which allows you to guarantee that there's an agenda on the top of R&D. Then you can make a Mad Dash for it. So yeah.
Indexing also bears mention.
Yeah, indexing's a very good call. Yeah. So yeah, there's actually a lot of possibilities. All the cards I've listed so far can be played by any of the factions. Yeah, every faction has something to enable this. So it's a very... I would say it's actually a relatively strong card. I would never underestimate any card that advances your win condition directly. You might start seeing quite a bit of this being played. Yeah. Any other thoughts?
This is really strong, actually. It seems like the cost for the runner to get one agenda point has like steadily gone down from like notoriety, which was 3 runs, and to freedom, which is just 3 credits, and now this, which is 0 credits. You just need to make a pinpoint run at some point during the game.
Yeah, I mean, it's nice because Global Food has been rendering the more aggressive criminal archetypes rather unplayable. It's quite hard to play aggressive criminal when you get just locked out after stealing 2 or 3 agendas. And this helps that. So that's the upside. The downside is, as you said, there's a bump in the power level as time goes by. And unfortunately, this makes games a bit more swingy because the nature of Mad Dash is, if you're playing a deck that plays Mad Dash, typically the game comes down to, do I steal an agenda on this run? If I do steal it with a Mad Dash, I win. Otherwise, I'm very far behind. It could lead to situations like this.
It does seem like almost a direct counter to Global Food Initiative.
Yeah. Yeah,
and
it does feel that way.
Yep. You have a good point with the aggressive criminal decks. It is unfortunate that it seems like they'll also have the hardest time using this card though, because they usually can't like make a run that guarantees that agenda will be scored.
Yep. Yeah, aggressive criminal don't have much in the way of those tools. But the thing I envision with this card is you can just play willy-nilly, because if you don't get an agenda, you just take a damage, and you can recur this the same old thing. So you just keep poking until you find something.
That's a good point. That's so Anarch.
Yeah, and Anarch can do this as well. Yeah. What else? Yeah. Because it's a neutral card, it can be played in a lot of places, and yeah. I guess the one downside about this is that you need to use deck slots for this. You would think that this effect would kind of replace multi-access in your deck, but it doesn't. You need multi-access to play in conjunction with this if you want to make this any good at all. Which means that you're going to spend a lot of deck slots on multi-access and Mad Dash. That means less slots for your breakers, less slots for economy. So it might be a bit harder to build a deck around Mad Dash, but if you do, it will probably pay off very well.
Yeah, I expect to see quite a bit of this card. It's really strong in Adam with Find the Truth and costing 0 influence and being a run event.
Ooh, will Adam be tier 1?
Maybe. It's you can just Mad Dash all over the place. Safety first, draw some cards, even if he misses. Let us know if you're there.
I mean, from the person who played Adam at King of Servers this year, I think you found it pretty effective, didn't you?
Adam was really tough to play, but yeah, he seems strong.
It'll be a very interesting world we live in when Adam becomes tier 1. We'll see if that happens with Mad Dash. For now, we'll dash off
I'm
to
excited.
the next card. Now we're going to the co-op side. This is Z 2.0. It's a Bioroid. It's basically a worse version of Itchy in a lot of ways. It's 6 to res instead of 5. It has the same strength. It has a potentially useless subroutine. The 2 brain damage is useless if the runner hasn't broken anything with clicks yet. However, the big appeal of this ice is that if the runner has any sort of hardware installed, they are going to be faced with a very tough decision when they face check this ice and have no way to break it with their breakers. They can spend 2 clicks to break 2 subroutines, which means one will always fire. So they have to choose between getting 1 hardware trash or taking 2 brain damage, which is really significant. It's not just 1, it's 2 brains. So that is what I really like about this card, and it's going to punish runners who run with hardware out. This is going to be quite painful.
Yeah, this is a super interesting ice. You're right to compare it to Ichi, but Ichi also has that third subroutine that rarely does anything because it's trace 1.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yep.
So basically, what Ichi basically reads in most games is if the runner has programs, they have to spend 2 clicks to get through Ichi.
Mm-hmm.
This one is if the runner has hardware, they have to choose either to lose their hardware or to take a bunch of brain damage.
Both
Right.
are very bad options, especially if the hardware is your console or something like Cipher, which you spend 5 credits to play.
Yeah. And I think the choice is even heavily weighted here, where if you want to keep your hardware, it's really hard because then you can't run the Z anymore until you can break it. Whereas if you lose your hardware, then Z doesn't do anything.
Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of like running through Ichi with no breakers. That's not an ice that the court wants to res against you. And if they already have it res, well, this is not going to do anything. But yeah, finally we get an ice that really punishes hardware. The best that we had before this was Taurus, which, not that good.
Yeah, it was a little too pricey, and while having the same problems of like getting turned off very easily.
Yep.
This one,
very
this
significant.
one's cool.
Yep.
It's a little positional too, in that if you have it beneath another Bioroid ice, then it discourages the runner from clicking through the other Bioroid, or maybe you can like sneak brain damage or hardware trash on them if it's unres.
Yep.
So yeah, it's a little pricey, but it seems quite strong.
Yeah, it is. And one thing that it does that most other Bioroids don't do is protect against multi-access, especially if that comes from cards like R&D interface. So even if Z 2.0 is your innermost ice on R&D, the Shaper player still has to break it. Otherwise, they will only get the single access. So, yeah, Z is not a card that you can Hail Mary through if your deck is built a certain way. So, yeah, a very important point to note is that Z is a destroyer, even though it doesn't trash programs. So, going against the convention.
Why?
Yeah, I don't like it at all. It definitely goes against the conventions that we've established so far. So, not a fan of it, but it has the subtype. We'll have to live with it. Can be broken by sharpshooter? Okay, whatever.
This pack has the worst templating yet, I feel.
Yeah. We'll get to
We'll get to some of the other issues.
Yeah. Oh well. That's how it is. Maybe when we get our packs it'll be fixed, but nah, I don't think so. Sadly. That's
I like this card a lot, mainly because it comes out right after Cipher, and it adds a lot of pressure against Cipher decks if you're seeing a lot of those, and you probably are.
Yeah, it almost seems like a direct answer to Cipher, which is pretty nice.
Mm-hmm.
Alright, let's move on. This is Kakugo. This is a Jinteki barrier. Did a bit of research. Apparently Kakugo means preparedness, something to that effect, so I guess doesn't really make much sense, but I think you can envision the ice as being prepared to strike whenever the runner passes it. Boom, 1 net damage. So this is actually a very powerful effect. I think the first of its kind. I don't think we've seen any ice that have on pass triggers. So this is actually a very powerful trigger. Basically for these kind of triggers, if you don't have any way to destroy the ice,
Or derez it.
yes, or derez it. Oh yeah, that's true. If you derez it during the run, like with Crescentus, you won't suffer the effect. Otherwise, you will have to deal with this effect every single time you run the server, and that is actually a big deal for criminals and probably shapers as well.
Yeah, it adds up. It's like, it's like bioethics association, right? Like one net damage every turn is really bad. This is one net damage every time you want to run that server. So you can't really run that server much anymore if you can't deal with it.
Yeah, and as much as I enjoy the exploration of design space in Netrunner, I think this can be potentially very dangerous.
A little
Because
bit.
yeah, going back to what we talked about, how certain cards encourage certain archetypes on the other side. This will encourage more people to play decks like Diaper, which bypass ice completely, or decks like Anarch Parasifer that destroy ice and keep them in the bin. So yeah, it's actually quite scary because it punishes the so-called good guy archetypes, your criminals, your standard shaper decks.
Yeah, that's been a theme I've been noticing with a lot of these new cards. It's that if they're good, it's not good for the game because there are all these oblique strategies that ignore most of what Netrunner is about, and they get better and better the more powerful cards you print that like hurt the normal strategies.
Yeah, I agree. That is quite a pity with the way the game has been designed, especially recently. The good news is with this card, it is quite okay. It's somewhat below the power curve. 4 to res for a 1 strength barrier. Who would ever play that? 4 to res. That is pricey. I mean, I could get a Bastion for that price.
It seems appropriately costed. The one net damage tax is still a tax, right?
Yep.
So say Bastion costs you 3 credits with Paperclip. This will cost you 1, but do a net damage also.
Yeah, it is reasonable. Yeah. Some people, I've talked to some people and they feel like it would be appropriate at 3 to res, but in any case, I'm just happy that it costs the corpse a notable amount of money to res this.
Yeah, agreed. It's a cool card. I think it'll mostly see play in like decks that aren't that fun to play against, but they're like fun decks to have around in the game as long as they're not overpowered.
Yeah, it always goes down to that. It's a balance between how degenerate a deck is and how powerful it is. Things are fine until they dominate the meta game.
Right. So this will very likely see play in Potential Unleashed, I'd say. It's like pretty much designed for like a 1,000 cut strategy.
Yeah, it definitely synergizes very well with Potential Unleash's ability. Potential? I said potential. I meant Potatoes Unleash. Yeah.
Right.
It's going to throw a lot of potatoes at your opponent.
Yeah, any sort of grinder deck probably really wants this card.
Yep.
The only risk you're taking really is like how much Parasite is there on the runner side.
Yep. And yeah, it's still notable that even criminals and shapers who will have to suffer this effect can still defend against it. There are still cards like Net Shield or Feedback Filter that just ignore net damage. So it's not the end of the world. This is definitely not an end of the world card. Because of its place on the power curve, I think it will be quite interesting to have around.
It's notable that for Jinteki, they're kind of short on barriers to play, right? It's before now, like if you wanted to play some kind of barrier in your deck, so you could play gear check against a Fractor, you would play like Himitsu Bako, which is not very strong costed, or like Wall of Static or something. So this is like a very legitimate option for a lot of Jinteki decks.
Yeah.
especially if the net damage like really plays into what your deck is trying to do. I think you probably want to play this card, though you do have to consider that Bako is good against Parasite and this one isn't.
Yep, that's very true. Yeah, that will devolve into a meta call, I guess. If you think there's gonna be a lot of Anarch, Bako is probably better. If you think that Shaper and Criminal will dominate, Kakugo is what you're looking for. So it's good that you have a lot of options. I like that. You can tailor your deck to different metas depending on what you expect, and that's always a very cool part about deck building, I think.
Agreed. Nice choices have become more interesting, and that is a good thing about these new cards.
Yeah, I'm very impressed and glad that we got to talk so much about the state of Netrunner and design decisions and how they affect the game. This is really interesting. But for now, we'll move on to the NBN faction. You would think they get good cards, and this one seems pretty good at first glance. This is Net Analytics, and it draws NBN a card if the runner avoids or removes one or more tags. I say NBN, you can splash it, it's one influence, but let's get real. This has to do with tags, so it will probably stay in faction. It has potential for a lot of resource gain. You can gain a lot of cards with this if you are slamming tags on the runner left, right, center. Data Raven, CTM are all very obvious synergies with this card.
CTM is the huge one because the ID also protects the asset.
Although, yeah, it should be noted that a runner trashing Net Analytics won't trigger it because it gets trashed before it triggers. But yeah, given that you're already going to spam assets, Net Analytics definitely helps with that. I do not think it is better than Sensi, but let's be real, what is better than Sensi? However,
wow, that's a sentence.
yeah, sorry, being Captain Obvious here. But still, if you still find you're short of cards for some reason, Net Analytics is a very good include. One very cool thing is that it does synergize with Daily Business Show because typically runners avoid or clear attacks on their turn. So you get to draw on your turn, which triggers Daily Business Show. Sorry, you get to draw on the runner's turn, which triggers at Daily Business Show one extra time, which is quite cool. So yeah, I would suppose that if you're playing Net Analytics, you want to play Daily Business Show as well.
That's cool. If, as a lot of people are hoping, something happens to Sensi Actors Union, who could say what could happen to a fine card?
Assuming something happens to Sensi Actors Union, I think this could be the next best draw engine for NBN, possibly.
Yeah, CTM really does want a fair bit of card draw, so this could slot in and combo with Daily Business Show to become a new draw engine. That might be pretty cool.
Yep. Yeah. Unfortunately, it doesn't really do much if you're not going on the tag plan. So a regular NEH deck, probably not. A Butcher Shop deck, I don't think so. So besides CTM, since you have quite a bit of expertise on horizontal NBN decks, what do you think? Where else do you think this could go in?
It's a tougher sell outside of CTM for sure. I could see it in some styles of NEH, because NEH naturally wants a bunch of assets anyway. This like draws you a card for free from NEH, and then if you just play some like tagging ice that you expect the runner to run into, it gets you some cards. So it's very similar to like Lily Lockwell, which I played 2 years ago at Worlds.
Yeah, in your NEH kill deck, yeah.
Yeah, like assets that draw you cards are really good at NEH because they're just reinforcing what your ID does.
Mm-hmm. Yep, that sounds pretty good.
Yeah, like this card seems cool. I think it seems like at a good power level, maybe a little bit below the curve because it's kind of conditional and the runner has a lot of control over whether you can trigger it or not.
Yeah, that's what I want to get into. Unfortunately, it is a bit too conditional because if the runner goes tag me, and you bet there'll be more tag me runners now with the clan subtype coming out on the Anarch cards. Yeah, some runners will want to keep those tags, and this will get absolutely no triggers at all if the runner has no intention of clearing those tags. So you could be staring down a very dead card in your deck. That is quite a notable downside.
Yeah, that's pretty devastating
Yeah.
because you're already playing so many cards that become dead when the runner goes tag me, right? Like all your tagging cards suddenly don't do much.
Yeah, and yeah, it doesn't help that you have another dead card in your deck. So it's still pretty good. Like it does something against most other runner strategies, and you should have some way of punishing those tag me runners. But I think a good conclusion is if you're looking for the best card draw that is 0 to res and 3 to trash, play Jackson Howard instead. Yeah,
Yeah,
you can play both.
the 3 to trash part is, of course, also relevant right now.
Yeah, I heard some runner has 3 credits to trash everything. I don't know which one it is, just saying.
That sounds
For
really
those
good.
of you who don't like playing horizontal, there's always more ice, more tag-based ice for you to play with. This one is Sync BRE. The title of the card might clue you into what sort of ID you want to play this in. Maybe not. I'm not sure if there's a direct strategy there, but in any case, this is a 4 to res, 6 strength sentry. So that's a very good ratio right there. 4 and 6.
Yeah, there's another really good MBN ice with those numbers. That's pretty good.
Nah, the other one is crap. It only has 1 subroutine. This has 2. This has 2 subroutines.
Oh my god.
Yeah, first subroutine gives a tag. It's trace 4. Second subroutine is a trace 2, and it's currently broken because templating. Under renovation. Please check back later. But yeah, from what we know, this is supposed to reduce the number of cards accessed by the runner by 1 for the rest of the run.
Oh,
Hopefully.
has someone said that?
That's what I've heard.
Okay.
It would really not make sense if it were ruled some other way.
Yeah,
Like, for the rest of the game.
it makes much more sense than like per turn or whatever else the duration could be. It's probably for that run.
Yeah.
But yeah. Come on, FFG, get your act together.
Yeah. I mean, surely they must have spotted this with that many playtesters. Anyway, I won't speculate as to what goes on behind the scenes. What I will say though is that this gives Data Ravens somewhat of a run for its money. The big problem with Data Raven is that it doesn't end. I mean, the runner can just bounce out. It doesn't punish face checks. This does, and has an additional subroutine on top of it. So, if you're going for a single access run like poking HQ or R&D, the second subroutine can very easily just nullify your run because you don't even get the access that you wanted. So, I really like this ice, and it's potentially more taxing because it's 6 strength. This means that you're basically not breaking it. I mean, let's be honest. When was the last time you saw someone breaking a Gutenberg with a proper breaker? So yeah, I don't think anyone's gonna break this with a regular breaker unless you're running Mimic Sucker or Switchblade. So either you need a lot of link or a lot of money to beat the tracers. Otherwise, this is just gonna be a pain in the butt from start to finish once it's rest.
Yeah, good point. You're the sync expert here. What do you think about sync with this card?
That's a very good shout. I'm not sure if this fits in Fiery Info. Maybe it does. But yeah, it's an interesting piece of ice. I definitely can see it competing with Data Raven.
Yeah, same price point, also a sentry. Data Raven is still really strong, of course, because
Yes.
the unavoidable tag, the like super high impact subroutine. So it's even though they're at the same price point and both give tags, this does do something like a little different, which is pretty cool.
Yeah. Data Raven is still your to-go ice if you're forcing tags for purposes like quantum predictive model or I don't know, something. Yeah, if you want the runner to be tagged. This is better for minimizing damage, I guess, because the runner accesses less cards. They will still take tags, so it's just taxing all around.
Yeah, the face check penalty is the big thing for decks because that's something you always have to consider. Like, do I want to be set back 4 credits for the runner going somewhere else, or do I want to give them a tag and nullify their run or make them spend a bunch of credits? Okay. So the first time you res this, it's pretty awesome. This card mostly just gets bad if Link becomes a thing yet again.
Yep, Link is just a big problem for tag-based NBN in general. So I think the other problem you'll find when assembling an ice suite for your lovely NBN tag-based deck is if there are too many traces in there, you are super vulnerable to Link. So that might be the factor that will keep Sync BRE out of your deck, which is a pity because it's a very interesting ice.
Yeah, it's very similar to Archangel, cost and strength wise, but even more vulnerable to Link. So that is NBN's Achilles heel, I guess.
Very much so. If only they would print a card that solves that. Oh well.
You haven't seen Netflix? They printed
Let's
it
move on,
like
shall we?
ago.
We didn't invite you on to descend into Jankland. No way. Where we are going to, however, is into space with Jemison Astronautics and Oberth Protocol. So I guess we should discuss these cards together because obvious reasons. They synergize very well with each other. Fun fact, Jemison is apparently the first African African American? Yeah, that's it. Yeah, African American to make it into space. Yeah, there we go. So this is an interesting identity because what it does is it helps you lose the game by forfeiting your agendas.
Woo!
I wonder why. Maybe it's because it's in Weyland, the faction that's not really a faction, the bad faction. So that's the first strike you have, basically. Why would you play an ID that brings you further away from win condition? Now, it's not that bad because the effect actually helps you win quite directly. It puts lots of advancements in a single click, sometimes even clicklessly, which means that you can potentially score bigger agendas with this. And that's where Oberth Protocol comes in. So Oberth Protocol is basically a San that costs an agenda forfeit to res, but when it's res, it allows you to place an additional advancement token on a card that you advance in the server this turn. So basically, for all intents and purposes, it does the same thing as San does. So when you combine it with Jemison Astronautics, suddenly you have a very interesting way of scoring big agendas with ease. I would like to do a bit of fast advance math here. So Biotic and Sansan give you +1 advancement or +1 click, whichever way you think of it, it's a +1. Mm-hmm. And Oberth also gives you a +1. It does the same thing as Sansan basically. Jemison gives you +1 plus X, where X is the value of the forfeited agenda. So if you are forfeiting, say, a hostile takeover, which is worth 1 point, and you're doing the forfeit with Oberth Protocol, so you're using both cards in tandem, that's +1 +2 from Jemison, so you get a total of +3, which is enough to fast advance a 5-3 from hand. So, now we have a way to fast advance 5-3s from hand. So this could be a start of a new kind of fast advance strategy, one where you fast advance big agendas.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. So the core combo here is you need to already have scored hostile takeover, and you have Oberth Protocol on the table.
Yep.
So then you install your 5-3, advance it twice, then you have to res Oberth Protocol first, forfeiting your hostile, which puts 2 advancement counters on your 5-3 from your ability. And then Oberth triggers and puts an additional advancement counter on it. And then you advance it twice to finish it out. So you go up, you get a 3-pointer instead of a 1-pointer that you forfeited, so it's like you fast advance 2 points. So it's very comparable.
Yeah, and all you need is just to have Oberth on the table and have a hostile takeover in your score area and not have employee strike on the table. Sounds pretty easy. Love it. Yeah, I guess that just summarizes why it's not that good. Even though the best case scenario seems pretty appealing, it needs so many moving parts. Unfortunately, yeah, it's just very difficult to get everything to line up. And even if you do, what do you get out of it? A 5-3. What sort of 5-3 will you play that gives you such a good advantage?
Well, I think there are a few. The big one that comes to mind is high risk investment. That card is really nuts if you score it.
Yeah, high risk is would have been a very good agenda. I think it would see a lot more play if it were a 4-2 agenda. 5-3s in general are just problematic because runners stealing them will get very far ahead in the game. But otherwise, yeah, that is a very good shout. It's a very strong agenda that can single-handedly just solve all your economy problems.
Yeah. The main advantage of this combo compared to traditional fast advance is that you get to score any 5-3, and there are a lot of choices, right? Some of them are pretty strong.
Yep.
As opposed to having to score a 3-2, of which you have fewer choices, and almost all of them don't give you a bonus when you score them. The fact that Astra also gave you like one of the strongest agenda powers when you scored it, and was a 3-2, that's why it was broken.
Yeah, but speaking of powerful 3-2s, Weyland has a very strong 3-2.
That's true.
Project Atlas, and it does want more advancement counters on it. So if you were to do the 5-3 combo on an Atlas, instead of scoring a 3-pointer, you only score a 2-pointer, but you gain 2 Atlas counters. That could be a ticket to more hostile takeovers, to more 5-3 agendas. So that's one very appealing thing about this, is that you have a lot of agendas to choose from.
This sounds like a very fun, like, janky thing to do, right? Playing this deck.
Uh-oh.
You scored this, like, Atlas with 2 counters, and then you fetch up another hostile, and then you forfeit it to score another agenda. It's like playing agenda roulette.
Yeah, have you not seen the Titan fast advanced decks that were popular when Order and Chaos came out? Like an Atlas, here's a Trick of Light, here's more Atlases. This could end up being like that.
Yeah, but the fact that you're forfeiting all these agendas on the way, that's actually pretty interesting too, because that gets those agendas like out of circulation permanently. So
that's a very good observation. Yeah, on one hand, that's more moving pieces you have to take care of, and that leaves you more vulnerable if the runner steals them early. On the other hand, yeah, as you said, you can easily reduce your agenda density on R&D or HQ by forfeiting all these agendas. That's quite interesting.
You might get into some really interesting endgame scenarios where there's only like one agenda left in the game, and if like wherever that agenda goes just decides the game.
Yeah, that would be quite interesting. It would be really, really interesting if you cornered yourself into a loss because you don't have enough agenda points to score out to win.
Right.
That would be hilarious.
And,
yeah. Ultimately, I think Jamison just needs more support. At this point, even though it seems like a decent ability, I feel like this is basically the only card at this point we've seen so far that synergizes with it. We have other good cards that forfeit agendas, like Archer, which has been good since the core set, but you can't really leverage on Jamison very well if you're if you're using it on an Archer res, because it's not during your turn and it doesn't help you score agendas.
Well, there are other ways you can take this ID, right? Like, we've been calling Oberth Protocol basically just the Sansan, but it is better than Sansan if you're slow advancing an agenda, because it triggers once every turn.
Yep.
So if you can come up with some kind of slow advance plan, then Jamison lets you stack a lot of advancement counters on the cards that you want to advance.
Yeah, that's quite true. On the other hand, Oberth is super expensive. You have to pay an agenda for it, which basically makes it more expensive than Sansan, and it's so cheap to trash. So I would like to see a deck that can take advantage of Oberth Protocol to slow advance, but I think given that Weyland has no defensive upgrades at this point, it's gonna be very difficult to defend an Oberth Protocol. In fact, instead of Sansan, I prefer to see this as a biotech label, because realistically, you're only gonna get one use out of it, and while you can recur it with cards like Interns or Friends in High Places, you have to sack another agenda to get to make it useful again.
Well, it is a threat that the runner has to trash, similar to Sansan. And because if it stays out, then even though you can't fast advance 5-3s anymore, because you're not forfeiting agendas anymore, you can still use it like as a Sansan to score Atlases.
Yeah. Yep, I can see that.
This idea is really cool. It's I think all the strategies that it encourages are strategies that have traditionally been pretty bad in Netrunner. Well, it has like there's weird fast advance, which is the most promising avenue, but there's also like decks that try to score government takeover, uh, like decks that rely on advanceable ice, right? Things that have never really been good. This ID might push to become playable.
Yeah, I still don't really rate advanceable ice very highly because yeah, if you're sacrificing an agenda to place a couple of
Mm-hmm.
advancement tokens on an ice, you are not going anywhere. Of the strategies you listed, I think the most interesting one to see would be a trap-based ID. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
a trap-based strategy. So you have a benign-looking card in a remote. The runner runs it. Oh wait, I trigger Ober Protocol. I'm gonna put some advancements on it. Eat the Junebug, son. That
Yeah,
would be interesting.
that's pretty
Yeah,
huge.
that would be what I mean. That would be the jank that I see coming out of this, and that could potentially be interesting and good jank. So yeah, I'm with you. It can open up the route to quite a few so-called bad strategies that were unviable in the past. So that's good. Um, my
Yeah.
only hope, my only hope is that Jamison doesn't lead to the birth of a degenerate deck. The problem with Jamison is that it doesn't trigger once per turn. It's not limited to once per turn. So
Right.
potentially, if you have some way to get lots of Jamison triggers, you can easily make a one-turn combo. And we all know what one-turn combos are like after seeing CI7. Hopefully that won't be viable.
Yeah, I mean, I could easily see that happening if FFG prints the wrong cards. But the fact that you have to forfeit an agenda every time to trigger it is, I think, a very good check mechanism. Because if you manage to
Yeah,
score like 3 agendas or so, then you kind of deserve to win, right? That's how you win the game.
pretty much, yeah.
So that's a pretty good natural balance on the card. I do think, I guess my like beef with the card, that's not even the right word. The problem with the idea is probably how inconsistent it's going to be, because you really need all your combos to come together in the right order, and you also need agendas of different sizes to really take advantage of it.
Yep.
So there's going to be a ton of variance in your games on like whether the runner gets your 1 pointers or your 3 pointers, and whether you manage to get the right cards to score your agendas in time.
Yep. Uh, yeah, it just has a lot of moving parts basically, and that is a natural characteristic of any deck with a lot of moving parts. Sometimes you find them, sometimes you draw them in the wrong order, sometimes you don't see them at all. Well, it's a card game.
Yeah.
That's all I can say.
It'll be really
Right.
interesting to see what decks are built from this ID. It's a difficult task, so I'll look forward to what better deck builders do.
Same. I what will really be interesting is the evolution of the decks that we see from pack to pack because I would hope that more support for this ID comes out in the packs to come.
Yeah.
Right. So that wraps it up for the first half of this pack review. Tune in next time for the second half where we cover the rest of the cards in this pack. For now, it's goodbye from me and goodbye from Timmy.
Ciao. See you next time.
Right. See ya.